Oh, so thank you for making time for us today, Wendy.
Pleasure.
You are an occupational psychologist, the first one I've managed to speak to so far.
Yes.
Um, and it would be good to, if we start with what you do at the moment, and then we'll kind of jump back and see how you got there.
Yeah.
But yeah, what does a sort of typical week look like for you?
Oh, that's a good question. So I'm an occupational and a coaching psychologist, and obviously within the BPS, there's those two divisions now, and there's a lot of us because we've added coaching later on who've become kind of dual chartered. But and that kind of influences what my week looks like because um, I mean, occupational psychology is really about the psychology of people in work. And obviously, then being a coaching psychologist means I'm adding in coaching to helping people in the workplace. So, typical week for me will involve running the program that I run. So, I run a program on a 6 monthly basis which is called the Psychology Practice Accelerator. And that's a program that's been running for nearly 8 years now. And that's about helping psychologists in their workplace, meaning their private practice. So I kind of apply my occupational psychology hat to that. Um, but I also, prior to running Practice Accelerator, I had a career where I did a lot of work with international companies helping them to move people around the world, helping them with talent development for their employees, helping them to get the most and support their employees in the best way possible. And I still do that too. So
Hmm.
my work will include supporting the folks who are on our program. So I might be sending emails out to them, sending WhatsApp messages to them, asking them, what are your goals for the week, what you're working on, and replying to any requests or responding to any questions that they've got. And then I will also probably have um, several coaching sessions booked into my diary that week. That
Hmm.
might be with people who are working in big organizations where I'm doing the exec coaching still, or
Yeah.
it will be people who are on my program, so psychologists themselves.
Hmm.
We also support a national charity, so that was kind of one of those random things that comes along, and I ended up working for a long time with this national charity. I think it's been the last 5 years now that I've been working with them. So that's management development, leadership development for those guys. Um,
Hmm.
so they'll have booked some sessions in as well. So various coaching sessions, various answering queries, supporting people, sending resources out, and then I'll probably be um, delivering a masterclass on something to my folks in my program. That means I'm probably writing it the day before or, in the 2 days before. I know what I want to say, but I need to put it together
Yeah. Yeah.
before I deliver it.
And I
Um,
like that the day before because sometimes we look at people and like I said to you before we came on the call, I've been following you on social media for a long time, and everything looks so impressive. It looks so polished. I'm loving that. Put one
yeah,
together the day
yeah,
before.
I'm writing it the day before, of course.
Yeah, good. Thank you for being human.
I mean, what's the use of kind of pretending that I've done it a month before and it's all sorted out? I have a pressure prompted preference, like a lot of people.
Yes.
And actually, the fact that I need to deliver that thing before, it's almost like I can feel my brain going down the funnel of focus because I know it needs delivering the next day.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
and I've honed that skill over years now, so I'm proud of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Mine works the same way, and sometimes I think there's a bit of a almost a bit of a stigma, isn't there, to that kind of last minute thing. But I
Well,
know for me,
calling it a
sometimes
last minute thing. Why? It's just in time.
yes,
In manufacturing,
yes.
it gets called just in time philosophy, and they're proud of it. So that's what I'm going to lean into.
Yeah, yeah, I'm going to keep thinking about that. Yeah. My brain is the same. I find if I try and do something tons in advance, I just can't focus on it. And as we get closer to it, I'll find myself walking the dogs or doing something else, and ideas will be popping in. It kind of starts to percolate, and then it all comes together.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. And often when I'm producing something like that, it's, it's for the people I'm working with and the things that I've been working on with them over the last couple of weeks will also be informing and shaping the things I'm going to put into the masterclass. So, I really believe in this element of co-creation as well. So I'm not just making excuses for the fact I'm doing it last minute, but there's a real kind of living process too, working with people, supporting them in a real way in what's going on in their practice, and then putting that thing together that's like, this is the thing that for the to the best of my current and present knowledge and capability, this is what I'm delivering to you. And
Brilliant.
in that masterclass, then we have very live conversations that's based on what's going on in their current reality. And
Yeah.
so
Love it.
I think the other things that I do, because I work in private practice, I'm thinking about things like the marketing. I'm thinking about
Hmm.
our newsletter. I'm working with my daughter, who, as I mentioned to you, she works in the business as well. I'm thinking with her along the lines of, what are we delivering over the next 3 months? What do we need to get in place? How do we make sure we're keeping a pipeline of business coming through?
Yeah. Amazing. And if we jump backwards in time, what made you think that you wanted to be a psychologist? Where did it start for you?
I mean, I could get deep and meaningful about
It's
that,
up to you how
looking
deep
back
you
on
go.
it. But at the time, so I kind of stumbled into things in that I hated my A levels.
Oh,
Well, so I really enjoyed GCSEs, and then I went into A level, and I really struggled with that transition from GCSE to A level.
it's a big jump, isn't it? And what
It is.
subjects were you doing?
Oh, what, at GCSE or at A
No,
level?
A level.
At A level, I think I started off, honestly, it was a real pickle in terms of the choices. So I started off and I was doing art. I had history and English language, I think.
Hmm.
And about before Christmas of the first term of A levels, my either my form tutor or my art teacher said to me, and this is what they said to me at the time. I don't know if it's still the case. They said, well, if you want to go to like university and do something a bit more academic, you don't want to do art at kind of uni level, then you need to be kind of picking up a more academic A level.
Okay.
And I was like, really? That yeah, yeah, I don't think art is going to get you there. So I ended up, what did I pick up at that point? Was that when I got it? It was a little bit of time ago, if I'm really honest. But so I ended up picking up another A level, and I can't remember which one it was at that point. Then by the end of the first year of English language, I was absolutely hating it. And so I dropped English language and I picked up psychology.
Hmm.
So at that point, I was doing psychology, I was doing history. I can't even remember what other A levels I was doing, but on top of that, at the time, like a lot of stuff had happened growing up that meant my mental health in my A levels was absolutely in the toilet.
Oh,
And I had incredible anxiety and and depression as well. When I look back on it,
yeah.
it like my mental health was absolutely pants. And I had no support for that. I think I probably, when I look back, I think I had glandular fever at one point. I had no one helping with any of that. I just remember being permanently exhausted. So my A levels were a wreck.
Yes.
And
We're so vulnerable at that age, aren't we? Because we don't really
yes,
know ourselves very well yet. So if we're depressed or anxious, we've got no sense of, is this normal for me? Is this something? And people didn't
yeah,
talk about it. You know, we're similar
no,
ages, aren't we? People didn't talk about it like they
no,
do now.
no,
So there was no checking stuff
exactly.
out. There was no kind of, oh, I'm seeing something on TikTok and that sounds like something
No,
I
exactly,
experience.
exactly,
Um,
exactly. And so, I had good friends, and there were things when I look back on it now, there were things in life that were good resources for me. I had a best friend that I'm still best friends with now, who, was really kind of that real kind of safe person for me, even though she was the same age as me. Um, and just some people in life that were good people, and my teachers were good as well. But I remember in my mocks at the end of the first year of A levels, sitting in one of my mocks. I can't remember which one it was. Do you know what I did? The other A level I did, which was really hard, was music A level.
oh,
Music A level's really hard. Anyway, so I think I was sitting in like my music history mock exam or something like that. And I just sat there and sat there and sat there. I didn't even put my name, and my anxiety was off the charts.
oh,
So I ended up like muddling through my A levels, and I think at the end I passed music, which was a miracle. I think I did gen studies, just go and sit the exam and get some points. and and I got a B in history, and I was gutted about that because I was good at history, but I'm not good at exams, and it was 100% exam. So I got a B in history, and with that, I had applied for different universities at that point, but I got into a course on behavioral sciences. Now, how and why did I choose behavioral sciences? It was nothing more complicated than at the time going to the cinema to watch The Silence of the Lambs,
right.
right?
I'm wanting to be the Jodie Foster character. Can't
Well,
remember her name now.
it's a little bit more nuanced than that, which was that there's a scene in that film where she's running along the FBI campus and she gets to the end of a pathway and she's going one way or another and she looks around and the scene just stops there for a second and at the side of her there was a sign that said Centre for the Behavioural Sciences and I thought that sounds very cool. So I found a behavioural sciences course and you could major in psychology and get GBR, graduate basis
Mhm.
for registration. And I got onto that course, and that was the one I got the points for, and that was where I went. So that was my A level story and getting into
Yep,
course, which
yep.
I then loved.
Oh,
I love still that I did anthropology, sociology, and psychology because it was a really rounded perspective on psychology.
yes, nice.
Yeah. So that was the story of getting started.
Brilliant. And then I'm assuming you enjoyed the degree and then wanted to, did you go straight on to did you do the occupational psychology course first?
Yeah,
I've
so that
forgotten
was
that
another
you're a
random
coaching
kind of
psychologist too.
thing that happened. So, first of all, the first lecture that I went to with the course director, he had the audacity to stand in front of us, all of us on that course, and he said, most of you won't end up becoming a psychologist. And that was the click in my brain that went, well, I'll flipping show you.
Love
I was
it.
determined at that point I was going to become a psychologist. Anyway, so I majored in psychology and I didn't know what I was going to do. In my third year, I remember I went for various jobs, various assessment centres, and I wasn't particularly enamored with anything. And then quite late on in the year, I was going past the notice board. Remember, pre kind or early internet days.
Yeah.
So there's a notice board and there's just a flyer up on the notice board and it said, would you like flying lessons with your master's degree? And I thought, yes, I would. What do I have to do? And it was a master's at the College of Aeronautics at Cranfield University, master's in applied psychology, but with a real kind of orientation towards aviation psychology. No, I had been a frustrated engineer because I'm not that great at maths. So I'd not done maths A level. But I was kind of fascinated by these machines and these and the idea of aviation psychology. So I remember saying to my supervisor for my dissertation, she said, "What are you doing?" And I've been to these interviews and I don't know about that. I don't know about the jobs, but I saw a master's degree I really like the look of. But well, it's at this really good university. I probably won't even get in. And she went, well, there's a 100% chance if you don't apply for it that you won't get in. So you better apply for it, hadn't you? And I got in.
Yeah.
It's like, anyway. So I ended up going to Cranfield to do a master's in applied psychology, which was an occupational kind of accredited
Okay.
Occ Psych degree, but thing in particular looking at the world of aviation. So I had the best year of my life there. Absolutely loved it. It was really hard. Lots of stats and research methods after saying, didn't like the maths,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
absolutely loved it. And
Yeah.
then went into the Ministry of Defence and became a military psychologist for 7 years, specialising in training and performance.
And how does the training as an occupational psychologist work? So is it that you do the masters and then there's a period of supervised practice?
So there was at the time, now there's and and it was a little bit less formal than it is now, but beyond the master's degree, there's now something called the qualification in occupational psychology, which is the process that then leads to you being able to get chartership.
Hmm.
And that is now partly taught and partly about supervised practice. At the time, you could do it
Okay.
with supervision, but now the QOC psych is partly taught as well as that.
Yes. Yeah. And that 7 years working for the MOD, what
Yeah.
sort of things were you doing there?
Oh my goodness. Well, you see, I had said to myself, well, just go into this and do a couple of years and get lots of different experiences. And then I'm going to go into consultancy and earn the big bucks, right? Well, life never works like that. Well, sometimes it does, but it didn't at the time. So I ended up staying 7 years. And within that, I mean, the very first project that I did was examining the use of virtual reality. Now, this is mid 90s, like the technology was not there, but that is very typical that, military spending leads to a lot of technological development. So
Uh-huh.
at the time, we were looking at the development of networked virtual reality for dismounted infantry training. And so that was an amazing project to kind of work on. I also looked at, let me think, at that time, what were the other projects that I did? That was the main project I did. We did the first phase, then we did some subsequent phases, and then I ended up working. And so then there were, I think, a couple of little projects alongside that, but that was my main focus for 2 years. But then I moved to the Personnel and Training Command, working directly for in the Army headquarters for the Personnel and Training Command. And I did lots of super interesting projects there. But one of them was being the lead scientist for the first tri-service review of women in the combat arms. So looking at all of the research around women in combat roles, historical
Yeah.
and like lots and lots. I think I reviewed over, I think it was something like 243 papers and books that I went through. It was like a PhD level lit review. And then also establish what the protocol was for the trials and for the attitudinal survey work to understand what were attitudes towards women in the combat arms. And then at the time as well, in that role, I became the team lead for all of the human factors support that we gave to the Army Air Corps. So I did some air accident investigation. I was the lead investigator on two for human factors on two fatal helicopter accidents. And I was also in charge of kind of leading the team, making sure that they had the required training and that we were providing this support to the Army Air Corps at Middle Wallop. So those were just a couple of examples. There were other little
Uh,
projects around. Oh, and then I ended up running and bringing in-house the continuous attitude survey. So kind of setting up their first people analytics service in-house. So it was an amazing place to kind of get all kinds of experience.
and
Yeah.
is that kind of typical of an occupational psychology job, or is that quite unusual?
I
Because
think,
my sort of limited
yeah,
awareness, I would have
yeah,
been thinking about things like recruitment and psychometric and sort of aptitude testing and
yeah,
trying to
yeah.
get a good match for an organisation with who they're bringing in. So
That's
you're
very
kind of blowing my
typical.
mind a bit.
Yeah, so this is why I went into Ministry of Defence to get this amazing experience, which then contributed to me getting my chartership really quickly because the different areas that we could work on, I set up or I was running the confidential safety reporting system for that and also for the aviation area, but also for the training incidents that they had. So not just within aviation, but also like there's road accidents that soldiers would have, and so we would look at what was kind of leading up to that. So I think there are organisations and there are places around where you can get that really specialist almost experience. But it's fair to say that within big companies, a lot of the demand on occupational psychology is around selection and assessment.
Right.
So once I left the Ministry of Defence and I moved overseas and set up my own practice, a lot of the initial work and a lot of the kind of ongoing, income almost like, you could just go and kind of almost fill up your diary with that stuff. There was so much of it going on to the point where I did so much of that that I got so tediously bored of it that I literally almost can't do it anymore. I probably did. I did thousands upon thousands of assessments for roles once I was
Yeah.
in the Ministry of Defence.
Yeah. So you were used to that variety, weren't you? I can see how that wouldn't work.
Yeah, and
Um,
also being quite a creative, innovative kind of
yeah.
person who likes, who has lots of different ideas about things that we could do.
Yes.
So yeah, um, but
So
then
that then to,
having that creativity is good when you go into private practice and you can bring all that to, the fore, basically.
yes. Yeah. Just looking at my list of questions here. I think everyone I'm talking to, like, there's so much enthusiasm coming across in these conversations, which is brilliant. What are some of the challenges? Aside from the tediousness of too many assessments, what have been some of the other challenges, either in what you were doing or what you're doing now?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one of the reasons why I left the MOD was because I ran out of career progression quite quickly. So by the time I had been in the MOD for 5 years, I was already a senior psychologist, and there were only two positions in the whole MOD staying as a psychologist above me, and both those positions at the time were occupied by people who were not near to retirement.
Mm,
So that role wasn't, I was literally out of career progression within 7 years.
yeah, yeah,
Unless I stayed in and just carried on kind of staying at that level. Um, so thinking about career progression and thinking about continuing to develop yourself, and not getting, I guess this is one of the things that I ended up helping psychologists with, not ending up stuck on a treadmill of just delivering things in order to earn money.
yeah,
I think that is one of the challenges of certainly that I've seen of our profession.
yeah.
and that's where we end up going into um, our own practices in order to continue to build and develop and grow ourselves, I would say.
Yeah. Awesome. What's something that people sometimes misunderstand about what you do?
I mean, the classic is, you know, it's a real conversation killer when you say in a crowd of people, when they say, "What do you do?" "Oh, I'm a psychologist." "Are you analyzing me?" Like,
Yes. Yes.
and over the years, you get, you try out different responses to that, like, "Oh yeah, definitely, absolutely. I've been analyzing you since you came in the door," and then people get really
Yeah.
tense and stop their body language and things like
Yes.
that. So I think people just don't know what it is to be for people, what being a psychologist involves, which is why these conversations are really good. Um, and I think it is part of our role, and as kind of social media and yeah, as social media itself has grown, I think it's a good channel for us to speak in ways about psychology that make it more accessible, that help people understand this is what we do, this is what we contribute, this is how we work, so that either people can understand, oh, actually, I could get in touch with a psychologist and they could help me on
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
It's not unusual, for example, there have been cases where I've worked with someone in an organization, I've been doing coaching with them, and then 3 years later, they've referred a friend of theirs to me to help them with a difficult work situation.
Hmm.
So you can have that kind of thing happen where this hasn't come through that person's organization. It's not their HR person who's referred them. They've literally been talking with a friend and they've said, "Oh, could you help me with this situation?" Um, so, just people knowing that this is how psychologists can help you. And
Yeah.
also us thinking about the different ways in which we can use our skills to support people who might not need something like coaching, but might need, even just coming on like a webinar where we talk
Yeah.
about something to do with our working lives. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm realizing I didn't ask you what your coaching psychology training consisted of.
Well, again, back in the day when I did my
Mhm.
occupational psychology training, coaching wasn't even a thing. So it was hardly heard of in the mid 90s when I did my training. And at the time, the two modules within the Oxide training were personal development and counselling skills. So I did those, and I'd done some extracurricular courses in counselling skills and so on. And then in 2006, they set up the special group for coaching psychology with the BPS,
Hmm.
and ended up joining that. And so my training in coaching has really been about doing my own CPD, do, doing my own small coaches in coach training, and over 20 years building up expertise and experience in coaching because there wasn't really the developed pathways at those times.
Yeah.
And then, in order to get my coaching psychology, I was a registered coaching psychologist. And then, when it became the division of coaching psychology, we had to basically put a portfolio of evidence together, which was
Right.
assessed in order to show that we had met the criteria for being a coaching psychologist.
Yeah.
Now the process is different because there are many more pathways that have been developed.
Yeah. No, it's a good. I wasn't aware of what that training had looked like, so I think that's really useful for people. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I shared the same experience. It's one that sort of throughout, sort of during our career, it's
exactly.
kind of gained more prominence, hasn't it?
exactly
Yeah,
that. And it's good that it's become more recognized and more formalized because it does give people those pathways.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's still very I mean, coaching essentially is very experiential. You are practically working with people, whether it's in groups or individuals, and so I think it's good that it stays kind of very practically grounded as well.
yeah. And I've reflected a lot as I've been having these conversations um, about the overlaps between all the different kinds of psychology.
Yeah,
Um,
lots and
but
lots.
there's a lot of overlap, isn't there? But I think it's also helpful that there is sometimes that kind of standalone. I think it's helpful that there are still the different kinds of psychology rather than
Yeah,
it's all a bit of a sort of messy hodgepodge. And
yes.
yes, if we were just all psychologists, it would be so much more complicated then, wouldn't it? To sort of say, well, this is the kind of psychologist I am, this is the kind of work I do. That these things then do
Yeah,
become a bit of a shortcut. And like you say, that
yeah,
coaching is different to therapy, isn't it? It is different to counselling.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, definitely.
yeah, needs
Yeah, yeah,
its own place.
yeah.
How have your views on psychology evolved over the years as you've become more experienced?
I think my mindset about how I practice as a psychologist has changed. Because I never would have imagined when I first set out in work that I would have spent the vast majority of my career. I mean, I've been a psychologist for 30 years now, and 23 of those years have been in private practice. If you told me that
Mhm.
at the start, I'd have been like, you are kidding me. So that I think has been very different. In terms of my actual view of psychology, I think that I I guess I mean it's a really good kind of philosophical question to kind of come back
Mhm.
to. I think in with that, I'm very mindful of and very passionate about the role that psychologists play within communities and within individuals' lives.
Mhm.
And I think the more accessible we can, so why do I say the more accessible we can make psychology? I think back in the day, there was a real drive to be more and more and more scientific and almost to kind of put ourselves like the more in the ivory tower and the more academic and the more PhD and the more this, that, and the other that we did, the better we were as a psychologist.
Yeah, all very intellectual and academic. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And I think my perspective has shifted in that now I'm like, okay, the more we can make this applicable in people's everyday lives, the more we can use psychology um, to help make this world better, to bring more life to the world, to resolve more of the everyday problems, the better we're doing as psychologists. I think the other thing that is absolutely clear is we have to break out of the idea of psychology as a westernized construct. Like we have to
Mhm.
recognize that there are limitations to psychology because of it being a westernized construct and all of the way in which that has been created. So,
Yeah.
um, that showed up, for example, I had a really interesting conversation a few years back because I'd written an article about the risks of working with people who call themselves psychologists who are not qualified. And
Mhm.
I still hold this with the kind of it's not ambiguity, but there's two sides to that argument.
Mhm.
On the one hand, I still do really believe in the necessity to train as a psychologist. And at the same time, I recognize that there are ways in which that profession doesn't fit or can exclude or can be privileged towards one community versus another.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'd written this article and said, really look at who you're working with and whether they've actually got the right kind of qualifications. And then one of my colleagues, a lady called Taslim Tarani, had written to me and said, well, yes, but you got to think about who's allowed to join psychology and how there are different kind of filters that mean someone could be a psychologist or may not be a psychologist. That has also changed over the years in that the cost of becoming a psychologist now is very high. And of course,
Yeah.
when I come from a real working class background. So, my family had been 65 years in the same council house. We'd paid the mortgage 3 times on it. And, I was raised by a single mum on benefits. When I went into uni, there were still grants. First 2 years of my uni course, there was a grant, not a loan.
Yeah.
When I did my master's degree, I was able to kind of get a reasonable amount of funding for it. And then I could work through my chartership and it didn't really cost me a lot of money. When I look at the cost of it now, I don't know if at that point, if that had been the same for me, that I would have gone into it even with my
Mm,
working
mm,
class background. So, so I think that has also shifted my idea of, on the one hand, it's really important that we have effective training as psychologists. And on the other hand, I think we need to work much harder to make psychology much more inclusive and
yeah.
more
Yeah.
and have a broader lens and perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's such a tension, isn't it? It's, yeah,
Yeah,
really difficult. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Last question, Wendy. What would your advice be for young people who are considering becoming a psychologist?
I think definitely keep networking. So I think there is a general spirit within psychology to be open to supporting people who are just coming into the profession. Um, I think it's about getting curious about the different kinds of psychology that are out there. It's great that you can follow psychologists on social media now. So do that, reach out, get in the comments, get in the DMs and kind of message people about what they get up to and so on. Um, and I think also, and this is not meant to sound like a pitch, but also consider that one of the things that you might end up doing is running your own practice. And so
Hmm.
think about how you skill yourself to also run your own practice. And I would say, even as someone coming from a working class background, I never thought that I would end up running my own practice because I always felt like I needed somebody else to give me that financial security. But I would say you can still build your own financial security as a psychologist in
Hmm.
your private practice. And that I think that's a good thing to have a profession where you can do that. To me, it's almost like you create your own security from that. Yeah,
Absolutely. I feel much more secure
right.
running a private practice,
Exactly.
and having my eggs in different baskets rather than having a full-time job where you are a
Exactly.
bit at the whim of that employer, aren't they? If their priorities
Yeah.
change, or
If you
if
get a
it's the
bad
public
manager
sector and there's
that you
funding
can't
cuts.
bear,
Um,
you know,
yeah,
exactly.
yes. Oh, I think that's brilliant. Thank you. I'm just going to
Pleasure.
stop the recording there.